Intro music fades in with a dramatic, slightly mischievous tone, then quickly fades out as you appear on screen, looking a bit wide-eyed and slightly disheveled, leaning into the camera. You guys, you're not going to believe this. I was literally having a private meeting with a U.S. District Judge in my quiet lake cabin when Karen, from the HOA, burst through my door, clipboard in hand, to yell at me about my paint color. No, seriously, a federal judge. And Karen, in my living room. This is the craziest story you'll hear all week. You won't believe what happened next. I was having a quiet meeting with a U.S. District Judge in my lake cabin when, of all people, Karen from the HOA burst in. So there I was, minding my own business in my little slice of heaven, my lake cabin. It's not a huge place, but it's got character, a great view, and most importantly, it's mine. Or so I thought. This whole saga started, as most HOA nightmares do, with something utterly trivial. My cabin, being a cabin, has a bit of a rustic look. I like it. The HOA, specifically Karen, did not. Karen was the self-appointed queen of our HOA, a woman who wielded her power like a tiny, aggressive scepter. She had an eagle eye for anything she deemed non-compliant. And my slightly peeling paint on the back deck was apparently an affront to the entire community. I'd gotten a few passive-aggressive letters, then some less passive-aggressive ones, all demanding I repaint in a federally approved, non-offensive shade of taupe. I, being a busy person who also happened to enjoy the natural, weather look of my cabin, politely ignored them. Big mistake. Huge. This escalated to fines, which I also ignored, reasoning that their demands were ridiculous and their fines even more so. This led to threats of legal action, which, I admit, started to get my attention. I'm not a lawyer, but I know enough to know that lawsuits are not fun, even if you're in the right. Coincidentally, around this time, I was consulting on a separate, completely unrelated legal matter. I'm an historical archivist, and a U.S. District Judge had reached out to me regarding some very old, obscure property records that were pertinent to a complex case he was presiding over. He found my expertise invaluable, and due to the sensitive nature and sheer volume of the documents, we decided the most efficient way to review them would be at my cabin. It was quiet, secure, and had enough space for us to spread out the ancient maps and deeds. So, on this particular sunny afternoon, the U.S. District Judge, a man of considerable gravitas and quiet authority, let's call him Judge Thompson, was sitting at my large oak table, meticulously going through a stack of brittle, yellow papers. I was explaining the provenance of a particularly ornate land grant from the 1800s, pointing out a barely visible water stain that indicated its authenticity. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and the hum of focused concentration. It was, in short, a very important, very professional, and very private meeting. Suddenly, without warning, the front door of my cabin burst open with a resounding thwack. My dog, who had been peacefully napping by the fire, sprang up with a startled yelp. Judge Thompson, mid-sentence, looked up, his expression moving from mild surprise to utter bewilderment. And there she stood, Karen. Her face was a mask of indignant fury, her perfectly coiffed hair slightly askew from her forceful entry. She was holding a clipboard, naturally in her eyes, darting around my living room, landed on a stack of documents, then on Judge Thompson, and finally, with a triumphant glare, on me. There you are, she shrieked, her voice echoing off the wooden beams. I knew I'd find you here. And look at this mess. This is a clear violation of Clause 7B, Section 3, Subsection 5 of Community Bylaws. Unauthorized clutter. And is that unapproved historical documentation taking up valuable recreational space. I stared at her, my mouth agape. Judge Thompson, bless his heart, remained completely silent, simply raising an eyebrow at me, a silent question in his gaze. He had gone from serious judge to a man witnessing an absurdist play in the blink of an eye. Karen, I managed to stammer. What in the world are you doing? You can't just barge into my home. This is our community, and your disregard for the rules affect us all, she declared, puffing out her chest. I've tried to be reasonable, but you've left me no choice. I'm here to issue a final warning about your paint, your unkempt lawn, which, by the way, has at least 3 dandelions, and now, this unauthorized gathering. She gestured wildly at Judge Thompson, who was now slowly, deliberately, putting on his reading glasses, his gaze fixed on Karen. Unauthorized gathering? I repeated, try to keep my voice even, though I felt a vein throbbing in my forehead. Karen, this is a private meeting. This is a U.S. District Judge. Karen scoffed, dismissing my words with a wave of her clipboard. Oh, please. A judge. I've heard it all before. Probably one of your friends trying to help you evade your responsibilities. You think I'm stupid? I know a loophole when I see one. Now, about that paint sample. She took a step toward the table, her eyes narrowing at the documents. What exactly are all these papers? Are they evidence of some sort of unapproved modification? It was at this point that Judge Thompson, with the slow, deliberate movements of a man who has suddenly been forced to confront an extremely large, extremely confused housefly, finally spoke. His voice, when it came, was not a shout, but a quiet, resonant rumble that seemed to fill the entire cabin. "Madam," he said, fixing Karen with a stare that could turn lead into gold, "I assure you, I am indeed a U.S. District Judge. And while I appreciate your vigilance regarding community standards, I believe your current actions constitute a rather significant breach of privacy, not to mention a potential obstruction of a federal consultation." Karen froze. Her mouth, which had been open to deliver another blistering accusation, snapped shut. The color drained from her face faster than you could say bylaw violation. She looked at me, then at Judge Thompson, then at the ancient document spread across the table, which now, under his gaze, seemed to radiate an aura of immense legal importance. Her clipboard, which had been her weapon of choice, suddenly looked like a pathetic toy. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the gentle lapping of the lake against the shore outside. Karen, for the first time in what felt like her entire life, was utterly speechless. Her eyes, wide with a dawning horror, darted from Judge Thompson's unwavering gaze to my own, which I hope conveyed a mixture of disbelief and triumphant satisfaction. I mean, the paint," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She took a hesitant step back, then another, her gaze fixed on the judge as if he were a mythical beast. Judge Thompson simply watched her, his expression unreadable. He didn't need to say anything more. The weight of his presence, combined with the sheer audacity of her intrusion, had done its work. Karen, without another word, turned on her heel and practically fled the cabin, the door gently clicking shut behind her. We heard the frantic squeal of tires as she sped away. I looked at Judge Thompson, who was now calmly picking up the land grant he had been examining, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips. "Well," he said, turning the document over, "that was unexpected. Shall we continue?" I just shook my head, a wide grin spreading across my face. "Yes, Your Honor, I think we shall." And that, my friends, is how a U.S. District Judge inadvertently became my personal HOA enforcer. I haven't received a single letter from Karen since. My paint remains perfectly weathered, my dandelions bloom freely, and my cabin, once again, feels like my undisputed kingdom. After the story ends, you appear back on screen, smiling warmly. And that, my friends, is why you never underestimate the power of a well-timed federal intervention. If you got a kick out of this unbelievable tale, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more wild stories and adventures. You won't want to miss what happens next.